such a big job. This is what we see with the platelets. Up here, if we look, like I said, even though tiny, all right, they have a very complicated structure. They have that ability to move in that amoeboid fashion, putting out a little foot with that membrane and pulling everything along behind it, okay? Look at this structure that we see of this platelet. We've got some granules. We've got this open canalicular system. They have mitochondria because they come from the megakaryocyte, that great big huge cell that's sitting in the trabeculae, and as the blood flow comes by, it has the ability to snap off little pieces of that megakaryocyte. Now the platelets, if we had erythropoiesis, leukopoiesis, we've got thrombopoiesis. Why isn't it platopoiesis? Because another term for platelets is thrombocytes. That's how you will hear them often being referred to. They're also known as thrombocytes. So their production is thrombopoiesis. So they're going to have their stem cell, they're going to have their blast, that megakaryoblast, and then the megakaryocyte. And when we get to the megakaryocyte, all right, as that blood flows by, splits it off, we form the platelet. That platelet moves freely about 5 to 6 days, and then the other ones are going to get stored in the spleen for use. So in looking at what the platelet does, this process of hemostasis, stopping the blood or excessive blood leakage, okay? All right, we have the three ways: a vascular spasm, the platelet plug formation, and coagulation. So something happened and broke that blood vessel. That blood vessel recognizes it, and we have the vascular spasm. That blood vessel will vasoconstrict, all right? Because blood vessels, what type of muscle is found in the tissue of blood vessels? Smooth. We don't control that, do we? So it had something breach it, and that was recognized, and it made it go, whoop, stop that. Don't let that blood flow anywhere. So that's our first way that we try to stop or maintain or carry out hemostasis. Now, notice we've got some little platelets that are flying around with the red blood cells. So when we vasoconstricted, all right, platelets, they began to form a platelet plug. They're going to do some other stuff too, okay? But they are attaching to these little collagen fibers, is what they're trying to show you here, okay? And they're attaching to those collagen fibers, and with the materials that are in the blood, along with the platelets, we're going to form a web. And that web captures or traps those platelets, and we get the coagulation take place. So, the clot and the vascular spasm in this hemostasis trying to stop the blood flow. When the vessel is breached, all right, so when that vessel is broken, the damaged cells of that vessel will release chemicals that quick. So when the damage occurs, the damaged cells release chemicals. In the first step, the vascular spasm, there is very prompt constriction. It's our first and most immediate protection for blood loss. Now, the reason could be maybe we've got some pain associated with something. Maybe we've injured something. The constriction that will take place, hopefully, the constriction will allow time for the clotting pathways. Blood clotting. This means that we have to have correct clotting factors. Have you ever heard of clotting factors? Bleeding disorders, blood disorders, bleeding problems. Ever know somebody had them?
A lot of people who take Coumadin.
Some medications can cause that too, yes.
That's what.
Is it heparin?
Well, now, sometimes that's given to thin the blood. So you're thinking about like probably Coumadin or something along those lines, rat poison.
Even aspirin. Because I take aspirin every day and I know.
Aspirin, believe it or not, some of your, like if you take certain types of herbs or whatever, like, you know, one of the things that I take for the inflammation is the curcumin, okay? The turmeric, you know, that everybody's so crazy about, everybody take the turmeric, okay? I take curcumin, which is what turmeric comes from. So it's more potent than turmeric. That's a blood thinner. So lots of things can be blood thinners. But we can have bleeding disorders. Hemophilia?
That's what it was called.
Okay. And people who suffer from them, you know, things that we take for granted, they can't. Okay, because they can't clot their blood. And they actually might have to go to the hospital and get clotting factors.
That happened to my grandmother at my high school graduation. We didn't know she had a problem, and she didn't really know she had a problem. At the dinner table, she got a bloody nose, and then it wouldn't stop, and then it became like huge gushing.
Wait a minute, was she diagnosed with hemophilia?
I don't know. I was in high school.
It affects males.
Oh, it was awful. I mean,
But she might have had something that was causing the bleeding.
It
and
was
they
so
gave
bad.
her clotting factors to stop it.
They couldn't lay her down on the gurney when we called for help because she began choking and drowning on her own blood.
Yeah.
And she was in critical care for a week. Every time they would try to pull the packing out of her nose, it would start. It was like it was a hemorrhaging of blood everywhere.
They probably gave her clotting factors to help with it.
It was awful.
Hemophilia
She never
very,
traveled
very,
again.
very, 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 very rarely will ever affect a female.
Oh, okay.
It's a sex-linked disorder and therefore affects the males. So clotting factors, I know.
That's all it is.
Clotting factors are going to be very important. Your textbook doesn't get into as much detail as I would like for them to get. okay? But clotting factors are extremely important. Now, with this hemostasis, these steps that are going to take place. Now, platelets can release their own chemicals, okay? They can release what they term thromboxanes. And what that'll do is that will help incorporate or bring more platelets to the breached area. So other chemicals like the endothelial cells that are in the vessel itself, they can release chemicals also, and those chemicals actually help to bring other cells to the area to help with this clot that they want to form. All right? So the second step, the platelet plug. When we begin to look at those platelets, under normal conditions, we do not want those platelets sticking to anything in those vessels. So when vessels are intact, they have a coating on them. The coating is called prostacycline, and it actually repels the platelets. Because if we have a blood vessel, we want the blood to continue flowing normally. We don't want platelets building up in an area that they're not supposed to, okay? Because that'll stop blood flow, strokes, heart attacks, okay? Lots of unfun stuff will begin to happen. But if we begin to have a broken vessel, the collagen fibers that are making up that vessel get exposed. And the collagen fibers are just like the name implies, fibrous, okay? And therefore, the platelets are like, goody, 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 we got something we can adhere to. And they'll come and start sticking to those collagen fibers. Then, we're going to see that if those platelets begin to stick to the vessel, that'll draw other platelets in. So those platelets come in. So if we've got the exposure of those fibers, these are getting stuck up with platelets, these are getting stuck up with platelets. Well, now they're kind of creating this plug in that broken vessel. Now, when we have those platelets, they're going to release some substances. Because if they get stuck and they begin to clump together, they'll begin to degranulate. Serotonin that they have will be a constrictor on that vessel. And that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that we bring the ends of that vessel back together. That means we're going to attract more platelets, which will degranulate and therefore give us more constriction, okay? And we continue the process. So those platelets will come in, they will create that plug, they'll continue the vasoconstriction. The chemicals that are being released, this is a positive feedback cycle. So they get the break, start clumping, bring in more platelets, clump, more platelets, clump, more platelets, clump, more platelets, clump. It's a positive feedback cycle. Now, the clotting that's going to occur, this is termed coagulation. It's the last step that's going to occur. It's very effective. And here's what happens. Fibrinogen. What does it make you think about? Fibers.